Hello boys and girls, I'm the Comics Kid 2099, and every Saturday I talk about an episode of a superhero animated series, and today I'm talking about the two-part Batman the Animated Series episode, Robin's Reckoning. Before I review the episode, I'll sum up what happened for those who haven't seen it, and for those who have but would like a reminder of what goes down. If you don't want to know what happens, I would advise you to turn this video off right now, as it will be spoiler-filled. Essentially, we have two stories going on here. One, set 9 years before the episode, shows how Batman and Robin came to meet each other. If you're at all familiar with the origin of Dick Grayson, then there's not a whole lot of new ground covered here. Dick is a circus boy, his parents are killed by Tony Zuko's meddling, and he's taken in by Bruce Wayne and is eventually taken into the confidence of the Batman and will one day become Batman's crime-fighting partner. You've seen this story before in books like Dark Victory or All-Star Batman and Robin, or even in film like Batman Forever. Now, admittedly, this two-parter precedes all of those examples of Robin's origin story, but I'm going to be honest, if you hadn't seen any of those other versions of the origin before, which if you were watching this episode when it premiered in 1993, then you wouldn't have, but even if you hadn't seen those other variants on Robin's origin, I really don't think that we would have needed quite so much time spent on Dick's backstory. It's not that this episode is handled poorly or anything like that. This is handled about as well as it could be. But this series seemed to take pride in the fact that it didn't need origin stories when it first began. One thing I liked a lot about On Leather Wings was that it wasn't an origin episode. We began with Batman already established and fighting crime, and we don't waste time on stuff that can be inferred from context clues. Which is why it's so puzzling to me that not only did this episode feel the need to give us Robin's origin story, but that it felt the need to make it a two-parter. In a lot of ways, this story reminds me of the Feet of Clay episode, which was good, don't get me wrong, but definitely did not need to be two parts. In the same way, this episode is alright, but I feel like it's just trying to kill time by spreading everything out across two episodes. Then the other half of this story is set in the present day, when an ordinary night of patrol leads to Batman hearing a name that puts him in a bad mood. He drops Robin off at the cave, and Robin finds out that the name that Batman heard is the alias of Tony Zuko, the man who killed his parents. Pretty much the rest of the episode is either flashbacks or fight scenes in the present day. There really isn't a whole heck of a lot of meat in the present day stuff. We get scenes of Robin scowling, acting like Anakin Skywalker, right down to the "he's overly critical, he never listens" bit from Attack of the Clones. In reality, this episode is mostly set in the past, and like I said earlier, I just don't feel like we needed those flashbacks, and we especially did not need them to be so time-consuming. Also, we have Tom Wilson, famous for his turn as Biff Tannen in the Back to the Future movies, as Tony Zuko. And he does alright, but here I run into a problem that I talked about in my review of the All-Star Superman movie. Remember when I said that some famous celebrities can pull off doing voice work, and you would never know that it was them doing the voice? Mark Hamill as the Joker is a great example of that. But then you have Biff Tannen clearly doing Biff Tannen as Tony Zuko, and all I can think of in this two-parter is that Biff Tannen moved to Gotham and is in the racketeering business. This isn't especially the fault of Tom Wilson, and I don't want to say that it's anyone's fault really. It could be that I'm the only one who had a problem with this, but I don't think it's a small nitpicky problem either. On top of that, this episode's flashback sequences made me think about something I sort of had an issue with in On Leather Wings. Specifically, how Batman was a vigilante that the police did not condone and in fact considered a criminal. That's fine and all, but my problem then was that it's never referenced again, and in every other episode the police are pretty vague and kosher with Batman, and vice versa. But then here we find out that Batman's been active for 9 years? That is actually spoken in this episode by Zuko when he explains how long he's been on the run. So for 9 years, Batman was doing his thing, and he was considered an enemy of the state during all of those years? And then after 9 years of him being an enemy to the cops, somehow, off-screen, everyone is perfectly okay with him? I find that hard to believe. On top of that, it seems Batman was on the scene for 9 years, and it was only after 9 years that his rogues gallery started showing up. Keep in mind that, other than the Joker and the Penguin, all of Batman's rogues get their origins and or first meetings with Batman in this season, or the present day, if you will. Now, I for one prefer the idea that, as soon as Batman comes on the scene, his theatricality, to paraphrase from Batman Begins, is what sets off the appearance of the costume supervillains. But that's not the only way that you can play this. this. You could say that the supervillains were active for years before Batman became Batman, and that's why he does what he does. But I kind of feel like those are the only two options that you can go with. And this series kinda wants to half-butt things. Batman shows up on the scene at least 9 years ago, maybe even more, and then he is a stable presence in Gotham for 9 years. And then suddenly, for no real discernible reason, all of these supervillains start showing up in costumes doing wacky supervillainy things. In a way, this reminds me of the TV series The Batman, where we find out that Bruce has been Batman for 3 years, and only then do these supervillains start showing up. Both situations are bad and make no real sense, but I kind of feel like it's worse here. For all I know, this series will contradict this later on, and if it does, then I'd be perfectly willing to take the retcon over what we have here. But for now, this is maybe one of the weakest ideas this series has thrown out there. And I should go ahead and say that it's not all bad. I like that Stromwell from the episode It's Never Too Late shows up in the flashbacks, but since he's Zuko's uncle, I'm not exactly sure how Zuko fits into the whole family dynamic, with Stromwell's brother being a priest. But that's not a big deal, and hey, maybe those two wacky kids have another sibling that we didn't know about, or maybe he's actually Stromwell's wife's nephew, though I don't entirely buy that either. And an actual compliment to this episode, since I've been pretty harsh on it in this entire review. I love the relationship between Batman and Robin here. I like Robin quite a bit in the comics, but this show hasn't really tried that hard to make me love him. So far, he's only been in 2 or 3 episodes, it seems, and usually he's just in the background, not really playing a heavy role in the story. But this episode sold me on him, and because I know that later on the network executives forced the creators of the show to put more of an emphasis on Robin, I look forward to those episodes because of how strong the character stuff here really is. I only hope the future episodes with Robin really get him right the way that this episode did. That's about all I have to say about this story, guys. I know it sounds like I really hated it, but I didn't. Yeah, there were some things here that I would have done differently, and there's even a few ideas and concepts here that I flat out did not like. But I don't hate any of it. It's just not as strong of an episode as some of the others that we've seen from this series. But I'm not losing hope or anything like that. So I hope you guys understand where I was coming from in this episode, and if you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you did not like this video, let me know how I can improve my videos in the future. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. In the meantime, this time next week, I'll be talking about an episode of Batman Beyond, and throughout the week, I'll be doing all kinds of different videos. So be sure to tune in throughout the rest of the week to see what I've got planned. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.